creatures of the world, and welcome back to Coffee with Kerri-Lynn. Today I want to update a story that I did on April 7th. It's part of my The Kids Are Not All Right series, and it is about a young man named Bobby Maher. If you do not know about this case, I'll give you a brief recap, and then I will give you the new information that is currently coming out from the courtrooms, and you can look it up on the Daily Mail. Just Google it. You can look it up in the New York Post, has a story about it. But I want to take you back to April 7th, 2024. I will post the link to that video on this video in the description below. Young Bobby Maher was a young man of 14 years old. He was dating a 13-year-old girl, young woman, and his girlfriend and her friend were at the mall for the day, having a girls' day at the mall, and everything was going fine, right and dandy, until they ran into two 15-year-old boys. I'm not going to disclose the name of these boys because I do not want to give any credit, not 2 seconds of fame, to any alleged perpetrator, suspect, or criminal. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, Bobby's girlfriend and her friend were having a great day at the mall, girls' day out, when these two 15-year-old boys started following them, harassing them, allegedly. Bobby's girlfriend called him, told him about the situation at the mall. Bobby went to the mall to help his girlfriend, to protect his girlfriend, to get her away from these two 15-year-old boys. In between the phone call that Bobby's girlfriend made to Bobby and Bobby arriving at the mall, the two 15-year-old boys allegedly stole a kitchen knife from Target. When Bobby arrived at the mall, he was helping to escort his girlfriend and her friend out of the mall when the two boys allegedly confronted Bobby. An argument ensued, a fight ensued, and Bobby was stabbed to death. We have just found out through court documents that were released that the two 15-year-olds are going to be charged as adults, as they should be. And what happened at the mall had its beginnings in a park some 2 weeks before Bobby was murdered. Bobby had words, allegedly, with these two 15-year-old boys at the park. There's been some back and forth, I guess, throughout the school year between Bobby and these two boys. And during that encounter, 2 weeks prior to Bobby's murder, Bobby called the two 15-year-olds freaks. And that is what spurned this alleged murder at the mall. We all know I love using the word allegedly, but you gotta do these things. In the Daily Mail reporting from the release of the court documents, we now discover that one of the 15-year-olds allegedly held Bobby down while the other 15-year-old allegedly stabbed him to death. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, the kids are not all right. What possesses 15-year-olds, young children, to think about taking the life of another child? I blame pishit parenting to some degree. Parents that don't pay attention to what their children are doing. Parents that don't pay attention to what their children are doing online. And that is where my other big variable comes from. Why are the children of today so upset, so angry, so violent, so nonchalant about things that should concern them. And I blame the internet. I blame YouTube. I blame Facebook. I blame all the social medias for warping our children's minds. And that is what's happening online, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world. You can monitor closely what your kids are doing online, and you're still missing a whole bunch of it that's happening when they're not in your home. You can have the computer in the living room hovering over their shoulders. And when they go to a friend's house, that friend has a computer in their room or a phone. You can be the parent that withholds the phone. You're not getting the phone until you can pay for it. Your child's friends have phones, and they are accessing crap on the internet that is twisting their minds. Like TikTok. We have never lived in a time where children have mental illnesses that they shouldn't be having. We have evidence of young girls watching TikTok videos of people with Tourette's syndrome and practicing how those people act on video, and they are giving themselves self-induced Tourette syndrome. We've never seen the likes of this before in history. When my kids grew up, they were one of the last generations that grew up mostly off the internet. I was the last generation to grow up off the internet. The internet was a new thing when my kids were born. It was the 90s, and internet was just entering people's houses. Personal computers were just entering people's lives and people's houses. They were being taken out of the workplace setting and put in the home. And computers were becoming very affordable through the 90s. We did not get a computer until our oldest was 5 years old, because the price had come down enough for us to have one custom built that we wanted. The internet was dial-up. You had to wait for all the beeps, bells, and whistles to happen. And it just wasn't what it is now. I fell in love with graphic art. So I was making computer graphics. I was building websites. Back then, the websites were flat pages with pictures that you could put on a page and a link that the word said email, and you hovered your mouse over it and it turned a color and you hit the button and up popped an email form. Very, very simplistic. My kids weren't allowed on the internet. Our internet life was for business. And although I had a home office always in my life, once we got a computer, my children were not allowed on that computer because work took precedence. And work was at all hours of the day. You had to squeeze in work in between raising the kids and doing the housewife thing, and my husband was on the road and I was home, and I had control 100% of the internet and the computer. It wasn't until my kids were the back end of junior high, the oldest. We have to pin this era on the oldest, because of course he was the first one that got to do everything. So he was in about 8th grade when they were allowed onto my home computer, and that's when Facebook was basically invented. And because they all had little, they were just getting the emails at school with the .edu, so they could get on to the Facebook, but I couldn't. And that was a big no-no, so I monitored the hell out of that. The MySpace thing came along when he was in high school, He was in 9th or 10th grade when the MySpace thing hit really big. And the kids of appropriate age, they got to have their MySpaces, and I got to have all the passwords. And we, as parents, were very, very afraid of the internet. We had experiences on the internet early on of the distraction in the outside world filtering into our private life and through the computer. And as things progressed, things got worse. And we had to deal with, as parents, the first case of cyberbullying where nothing was done because there were no stipulations at school about there was bullying at school, but if the conversation and the bullying got taken into the internet realm, there was nothing that the school would do. That was an at-home situation. So we had to navigate, as parents, the first online bullying. My daughter's couple of her friends decided that they no longer wanted to be friends and started bullshit. And that bullshit didn't stay at school. It came through the computer. It was on the Facebook. It was on the MySpace. And it got to a point where we had to disconnect our child from the internet so that a break could be had in the mental health of her because of bullying. Then the online games hit. We were the first parents that had to navigate our kids being online, playing games, and talking to complete strangers. Stranger danger. None of it was fun. Did we navigate it perfectly? No, but we had a lot of safeguards. We had a lot of stipulations. They did not have their own computers. They did not have their own phones. We tried that once. It didn't work out so well for our oldest, so it never happened again. The phone was in my name. I paid the bill. Data was super expensive. You couldn't really access online at that time. Primitive, the early aughts with the phone. They weren't smartphones like they are today. And one instance got the phone taken away, and that was it. None of the other children ever got a phone. They could use my phone when they went out, and my husband had his phone. I had my phone. I'd hand them my phone, and if you're going to be late, you better give me a call because you're in big trouble when you get home if you are late. And we got to parent in a sphere of mostly normality, the way that we were parented while we were growing up. We had the early technologies, and we used them to the best of our abilities as parents. But nowadays, that is not what is happening. Nowadays, parents are handing children these mind manipulative devices. They're sitting them in front of the computer at earlier and earlier ages and plugging them in. They are not encouraging their children to have friends, to have sleepovers, to have interaction with human beings. It's all on that damn device. There is a lack of empathy happening. Kids cannot relate to human emotion anymore. They're relating to the garbage that they are seeing on the internet. Kids are not outside touching grass anymore. And this is a part of the problem, a part of the reason the kids are not all right. Kids are not out touching grass. They're not out with their peers. They're in the house 90% of the time, playing on these devices from very early ages. Some kids, right from the time that they can sit still in a chair. I've seen 18-month-olds in the restaurant with a device that's playing a movie in front of them, and those kids can operate those devices. This is the first generation growing up on the internet, and ladies and gentlemen, they are failing as human beings. Moms and dads, get your kids off of these devices. You are failing them as a parent, if you are letting these devices babysit your children need you. Your children need their grandparents. Your children need their peers. Your children need to go outside and play. Your children need to learn emotions and how to control their emotions. You cannot raise children who do not have sympathy for other people or other people's situations. You cannot raise children who do not have empathy for the human condition. You cannot raise children who are not conscious of other human beings and how to interact socially with another person. Because if you leave your children to these devices, they fail. These devices, technology, is not a substitute for human mom, for human dad, for human contact. It is isolating the children of today. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, Bobby Maher was an upstanding 14-year-old young man who went to the mall when his girlfriend, the love of his young life, was in distress, was being bullied and harassed by two boys that were much older than her. Two boys that we now find out that had prior alleged altercations with Bobby Maher. Two boys that are now going to be tried as adults. Two boys where one allegedly held young Bobby Maher down while the other one stabbed him to death. Ladies and gentlemen, the kids are not all right. Moms and dads, pay attention to your children. Pay attention to what they're doing. They do not need the devices. They do not need to be online. They do not need to be connected to strangers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are the parent. You need to set boundaries. You need to have guidelines. You need to parent your children. The world is falling apart. Society is falling apart, and technology is a big part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, Carpe Diem, because nobody promised you a tomorrow.